Truth, logic, action, power. It's the GreggHoush Show here on New Revolutionary Radio. This is a show where we seek not only to inform, but to inspire you to action. We're going to talk about politics and current events on our program, but we're going to do it from an angle of human rights, civil liberties, and activism. It's our goal to enable an informed citizenry, and we're going to do it by emphasizing critical thinking, news source verification, and actual science versus nonsensical quackery. But most important of all, we hope to inspire you, our listeners, to take action in your community. While it is our job to deliver the clear, verified truth, our talking to you is only a small part of our goals. The real power belongs to you, and it is up to you to decide where your strength lies when facing the real challenges ahead. But know that when you decide to stand up and make a difference, we will stand beside you.
Welcome to the GreggHoush Show, Episode 3. Today we are going to have a discussion of current events with some friends here. Our co-host Derek Gowries, our friends Mac, and the return of Lauren Pespisa, aka Splendid Spoon.
Yeah.
I would say follow her on Twitter, but it's private right now, so you're not going to see too terribly much.
You can try. I might let you follow me.
So here we go, Episode 3. How you want to start this one out, Derek?
I think a good solid introduction is the big headline all over. Everybody's kind of talking about is, ISPs selling data and what that means for everybody. I think a lot of people out there don't know the implications of exactly what's happening with that and who gets the information and what it means.
Sure. So the simple breakdown is the FCC has changed the rules. So your browsing history and other data like that that you might consider sensitive, but they have reclassified as not sensitive, is now free for them to collect and sell without telling you or getting your permission. And thanks to the wonderful new administration, they get to do this type of fun stuff. So a lot of us, including me, are quite unhappy about that, but I've just switched to doing anything that I don't want them to know about over a VPN and said, screw you. But for a lot of people, that's not going to be a possibility because what's a VPN, right?
Right. Yeah. So how far back does this go? I mean, history from 10 years?
Well, interesting is the protections against them doing this hadn't even actually gone into effect yet. We got some Obama-era protections that would have stopped them from doing this. And under this new setup, they just rolled back that ever actually happening. So the protections never went into place. In reality, nothing has changed over the current status quo, but we had a future where this wasn't going to be going on, and now we don't.
Awesome.
Yeah, so nothing's changed. Your data's still up for sale.
Yeah, and of course, that just simply means that any website you visit like directly from your phone, your web browser, really anywhere, is going to be sold. So if you have a problem with this, you should probably call your representatives, local and federal, and explain to them that for allowing this to happen, they fucking suck.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
Hopefully, they even know what they're talking. The problem is, do they even know what they're talking about?
Yeah.
The representatives
even educated.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
Is this foreign governments? Like anybody literally? Like it just sounds weird and, espionage. But can they buy it too? Or is it just companies or what?
Well, sure. So the one thing that's really interesting about this is, when you're talking about data that's up for sale, you look at like a Google or a Facebook. These two specific groups we all know, and either love or hate, they gather every bit of data they can about you.
Every bit. And
they use as much of it as you allow them to use, which is most based on their terms of services and privacy policies. But you go into that knowing you signed up for a Facebook account. You didn't have to. With broadband, especially your cable provider, your internet provider like a Verizon Fios, you might only have one or two choices. And so if you want internet at all at relatively good speeds at your home, you are now going through a provider, pretty much guaranteed, that is going to be selling your data and collecting your data. And unlike Google or Facebook, you did not sign up to them knowing that was happening. And you did not have a choice. If you want internet, you have to choose mostly local monopolies. Even if there's two choices, that's not choice.
That's the way the government
They're
set it up
both
to begin
doing
with.
it.
Yeah.
So what we've run into is this really weird situation where all the sites that I was signing up to that I knew I was giving away rights to, I'm giving the information that I want them to have, that I'm okay with them knowing. And I'm not giving them things that I would prefer to hide, whatever that might be, right? But my ISP, who's serving my internet, knows everything I do on the internet. Unless I'm encrypting it from my end out, they know everything. So where we find ourselves now is you don't get the choice anymore.
Mhm.
You know, you could choose, like many friends I have, including, people in this room, to not have a Facebook account, and then they're not gathering that data on you. That's great, right?
Sure.
Well, with this, it doesn't matter because your ISP is gathering that data. They have everything you do online.
Yeah,
Well,
I
how
mean,
They have not just, what websites you go to either. They know
you search
what,
for.
and what app you used that's internet connected, when you used it, sometimes where you used it from.
Yeah.
Like they
So,
know
like-
everything.
Like they know that you were searching for tentacle porn while you were out for sushi. And now they're going to sell that to advertisers who are going to target marketing ads for, more octopus
Now
sushi
when someone borrows
restaurant
your phone,
Right.
they're
with
going to be
naked
like,
models,
why
you
do you get all these sushi
Yeah,
ads?
There's no
right.
denying
Exactly.
that, yeah.
Exactly. Like this is what's gonna happen. Like this is it. You're gonna all your porn belongs to us now. I don't know.
This is the porn browsing history that would scare people the
Yeah,
most.
that's
Well,
the,
yeah.
that's the only way to press at home, man. All your tentacle porn
Yeah.
searches are gonna be logged
Sure,
by
sure.
ISPs, and they're gonna market towards that, and you're gonna have a lot of weird ads to explain to your friends.
It's a good scare tactic to tell people,
You'd
but
use that telling the
I also don't
representatives.
want them just knowing literally every last thing I do online.
Oh
Just
yeah,
personal.
when you went to what restaurant, where you went,
Right.
yeah, everything.
I mean, every little bit of it. And more important to this is that the rules they put in place not only stop the rules that were going to happen, that were going to protect you from actually happening, but they also prevent the FCC from ever enacting those rules again.
Right, just like
so
no takebacks.
yeah, no takebacks. Definitely a wonderful, wonderful thing they've done.
Took away the protection that we were supposed to have and expected, and then they also said, no givebacks.
So what we're left with is, as actually, to give credit where it's due, our engineer has so nicely told us, is pretty much a states' rights issues where states are going to have to step up and put in rules statewide that put these types of protections back in place for anyone operating in that state. I'm hoping that they do. And I think the only way we're going to get there is if, the people listening to this and everyone else out there actually calls their representatives and actually, seems informed and tells them what's going on and tells them that I'm not voting for you again unless you fix this.
Yeah.
Greg, maybe you know the answer to this because I'm not sure on this. I know one of the things that they could collect through this kind of data would be the sort of confidential health information that would normally be covered under HIPAA. Can they collect and sell that too?
Well, so under the broad understanding that's currently in place, they absolutely can. That's because there's no real net put in place around what data they're allowed to collect from high up. So until they're told specifically to stop collecting stuff like that or that they are in violation, they're going to do it. Until there's any threat of actual litigation against them for doing so, they're just going to collect it. It's much like the government's mass surveillance, that they might not be specifically trying to grab that one piece of data, but because they're grabbing everything, they got it. And
it's not just the government that's going to have it.
Of course.
It's advertisers. It's
Yeah.
now you're going to have advertisements for that strange genital itch that you searched for a while ago when you were looking and having that private email with your doctor or
Right,
private interaction on your doctor's website. And so now everyone's going to know you got herpes. I don't know. It's a scare tactic, but actually that's what could happen. Though
I don't. Thank you.
Yeah,
but,
I'm
you
just
know,
right. Not that you have herpes, but I do
yeah.
wonder though, are there like encryption technologies that like when you're doing something that's in a HIPAA form or in some sort of protected, is there any sort of software or protected input?
Some of the
like-
websites that you use that take that kind of information will, of course, be over SSL, but we all know
credit card stuff. I mean, they can't just take all your credit card information.
we all know that stuff is easily broken, and that if people aren't paying serious attention to man-in-the-middle style attacks and everything else, that it's going to be accessible.
Emails are wide open too.
Right, but the companies that the advertisers aren't buying that information so much. That's more of a concern of other third party people.
I mean, we don't know exactly what they're going to be selling or what they're going to be, providing on
That's a
the market
crime.
for sale.
Yeah.
Based on things like HIPAA and everything else. But the simple fact is, since they're turning on collection of it all, they will have it all available. And another thing we learned from that style of mass collection of the government is no matter what they tell us they're actually doing with the data, and no matter what they tell us about how much they're actually retaining, it's lies.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's a really interesting one right there. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this, and I think we need to definitely go at this one big. I know there's a bunch of groups out there starting to organize. I know Fight for the Future are one of them. Love those people.
Campaign for digital Fourth Amendment rights as well.
Yep, definitely. So, yeah, I mean, we'll provide a lot more on the website about how to contact these people.
So people can follow up. For sure.
Yeah, so dish up another topic. I think we've expired that one there.
Protect your data and
really.
end topic.
Assume that it's vulnerable. Assume people are going to see it. So what about the gesture of Trump donating his paycheck? So he's made a big deal of it in one way, but other people kind of see it another. I mean, what's the take on that? What does it really mean, and why is he doing it?
I definitely have a comment for this one. He could just not take his paycheck, right? And then the government is saving that money. He doesn't need it. And we know that that's something a president can do. They have the right to. But our Congress basically made him. They said, we need you to show the people that you're working for them by taking your paycheck. Fine. But here's where it gets interesting. Because he said that he didn't want to take the pay, he now says he's going to give it to, various
National
government
parks
organizations. So he gave it to the National Park Service,
cut
right?
The EPA.
but he cuts their funding basically. The Department of the Interior, right, Mac?
Right.
Yeah, he cuts their funding by like 1.5 billion, and then he gives them what? This check was $70,000. Yeah. So like 1.5 billion, but here's $70,000 of it back.
The definition of tone deaf, I think.
Yeah, it's a token.
But here's where this one really bothers me. If he's not taking his pay, right? Let's say he's not taking it outright, it's just not coming in. Then great, we save that money. If he's taking it and donating it, then it's costing us more than it would if he wasn't taking it, because it's not only costing the government that money, but it's also he's getting the tax break for this. And so it's actually costing the government about 1.5 times his salary now. So it's actually costing the taxpayers more money to let him donate this than it would if he just either took it or didn't take it.
Right. I mean, and there's the argument to be made that, since he cut the funding to the EPA and national parks, and then he's, at least he's giving some of it back, right? Well, it's not very much of it. And I mean, if he didn't take the pay, it wouldn't be like he had removed, like he still would have made those cuts. So he did give some money to some people, to the national parks. But at the same time, so with the tax, I never even considered the tax breaks he's getting for the donations.
He's actually getting personal tax breaks for donating that money.
He's trying to get accolades for screwing us over.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy.
It's
he took someone's wallet
and
took the one out of the back of it and threw that into them. And it's like, look at me, I'm such a nice guy.
Yeah, right.
And then wanted attention and he wanted to get credit for doing it.
And the look on the faces of the people standing next to him taking that check too, right? Like
beautiful.
Oh my gosh, they were not happy.
I mean, I think that's definitely what's going on there. And I think a lot of people should be complaining about the fact that our president just existing is now costing us more for a salary than it would if he wasn't doing these token gestures that don't actually help anyone.
Yeah.
Probably won't be the last time it costs us money to have him get a gesture that gives him credit for something, though.
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, this is Trump we're talking about.
He is good at taking credit for things he didn't do. So
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
So something a little bit more interesting. How about espionage, Greg? Something interesting that happened called Marble. What's up there?
Marble's a fun one. So WikiLeaks, of course, is releasing all of the Vault 7 files, which is what they've tagged this release. And
Marble cake.
It was not marble cake, although love the reference.
I like the name.
So I believe this was release 3 of the Vault 7 series, and what they released was something called Marble. And what this is a lot of source code that, programming that the CIA was using to hide and obfuscate their their malware and their espionage tools that were getting inserted into foreign dignitaries' computers, and they were using it as what is specifically called an anti-forensic framework, where it was trying to stop anyone doing computer forensics from figuring out that the CIA was the source of this malware. And it's a lot of CIA source code. It's 676 files.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Sounds like a pretty big package right there. Like that seems like a little. Like I feel like, how did that slip by anybody? You know what I mean? All right, guys, stop. It wasn't that funny. All right.
From over here.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
Yeah, well,
All right, you guys.
different people.
It slipped by.
I didn't laugh. I mean,
It does seem like a lot of work for them to put in, though.
No, it's not the work. It's that. How did people miss that? If that's was that. So are you saying the program was 600 something files?
Well, what it is this is just the source code. So, who knows how many of
Oh, it
these
was
compile
probably-
into
yeah, it
one
was
individual
compiled.
DLL,
Yeah, okay,
one
okay,
individual
okay.
exe,
It was an
Of course,
exe or a
different
.dll.
ones would be used for different languages, so that it
Yeah,
looks like
right.
coming from whatever country.
Right.
Yeah, and actually, taking it there, the source code includes Chinese, Russian, Korean, Arabic, Farsi, and English. So in goals of not only hiding the traces where you could make it look like one of those other governments or native speakers from there were behind the tool, but also in some of its more forward-facing stuff that was used to target people of those languages.
But does it include Hebrew?
No.
Interesting.
No.
Good question, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Look,
you know
look
where
at
I'm going
this.
with this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if we could infer, they're using code with other languages that's in it. Obviously, they're trying to cloak and pretend that attacks are coming from there, whatever they might be doing. What are the types of operations they put those kind of resources behind to do?
Well, I mean, one of the most famous ones that I highly doubt actually used any of the marble code, but simply because of when it happened, would be Stuxnet,
Yeah.
where you can see, that our government, along with another government, Israel,
Yes.
attacked Iran in a very just open manner. They did something that was not going to be undiscovered. They went after the centrifuges at Iran's uranium processing plants. Yeah, and with malware that would
centrifuges.
destroy them, basically. And yes.
no, like literally Siemens centrifuges.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to do that.
No,
Sorry,
no.
Eric.
So these, this attack was, it was obfuscated a little. It was sent out, but the goal of it was to try and seriously hurt and degrade Iran's capabilities of building nuclear weapons. And this was basically just a piece of code that, someone in our government, someone in, Israel's government worked on together to put out. And then those types of tools that were meant to infiltrate very specific foreign, hardware, software, even to target specific individuals. Marble would be used for the last at least 4 or 5 years to hide that tool, and then, if found, to hide the source of that tool.
So it's like a double hiding cloak.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound like that bad of a cause. I mean, they're stopping nuclear weapons, it sounds like, in a country we're nervous about. But who really determines what they're allowed to do? Where do those decisions come from? How do we have any control?
Yeah, who signed off on Stuxnet, right?
Yeah,
we don't
no.
know the answer to that question.
Mossad.
Yeah, right. I mean, we don't have like a piece of paper that has, someone's signature on it saying you can do this, right? We don't have a FISA court ruling that said go ahead. I mean, we don't really know. We've got a lot of facts around that one. We've got the source code to Stuxnet. I mean, we got that pretty early, actually.
Yeah.
But that is really one of the questions, because sure, on one hand you've got Iran. They're about to go nuclear, about to have nuclear weapons. Is the pitch, right? That's what we're getting sold. Who knows how close they actually were or are at that point? Not us. It's kind of like they're claiming that, North Korea has, actual nukes at this point. But every physicist I've talked to, which includes the head of the physics department at Harvard and the head of the physics department at MIT, both have told me, no, they have basically dirty bombs at best.
They don't even have ICBMs anyway. They can't get the nukes over here. If they had nukes.
They're getting close.
Yeah,
They have medium-range ballistic missiles.
Yeah.
But, so how far along they were, I mean, I don't know at that point exactly how far along they were, but what I will say is when you attack someone in that way, you're validating that as a form of attack that can be done outside of actual declared war. So you are attacking a sovereign nation on their own soil without declaring war.
And
You are normalizing that as a thing that they can do to you then.
yeah, and marble isn't. I know. There we go again. Marble isn't used for centrifuges in particular. It's used. What are they? They're hiding tracking software on.
Yeah, Marble definitely wasn't
It's much
for that.
more
It's just,
benign, or not benign, but it's much more like a
we got off on a
standard
tangent there.
hacker crap that we're used to, which is tracking
this
stuff.
is for like
you know.
rats, remote
Yeah.
access tools,
Yeah.
downloading your histories,
Right.
logging
Standard,
what you're saying.
yeah, logging stuff. So it's not like this is going to stop nukes. It's mostly just going to maybe get a lot of diplomatic cables leaked, hopefully. If we're going, or it's just going to, it's just leading to more spying, a greater surveillance state, or international surveillance state.
All right, so another nuclear topic, the nuclear option was used recently. So what are we talking about there?
The nuclear option. So what we're talking about there is Mitch McConnell. He has decided that we're going to get Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court one way or another. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about the traditions, about the rules, about how we've run this country to date.
Who does?
I mean, at this point,
Right now,
no one currently in power,
yeah,
I think.
no.
I don't pretend to either.
No.
But so what we have happening is the Democrats successfully filibustered Neil Gorsuch's confirmation to the Supreme Court today. And in doing so, forced the Republicans to either give up on this one or say that we're changing the rules so less votes will get him confirmed. And this is referred to as the nuclear option because the number 60 in terms of the amount of votes that you need to confirm things such as judge appointments, especially to the Supreme Court, is really important. And it's important for the simple reason that anyone in our government, when you consider sides, left, right, Republican, Democrat, independents, no one's ever had the power to get to 60 votes inside their party at that level.
Right.
And that
not for
means
any length of time.
What?
Not for any length of time.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
happened briefly. But
For many, many decades, we have been without that power, and it has, been better for us, I think. It's led to some stonewalling, but without having that power, it means that the content of your bill, the content of your vote, the content of whatever you're trying to talk about at that moment, the content matters, and how bipartisan it is matters. And how good it is for the country matters because you have to convince people from the other side, such as this one. The Republicans would have had to convince a bunch of Democrats to vote for Gorsuch and to not filibuster. And that means that, you're not going to get a Gorsuch through, but you might have gotten a Merrick Garland through because he's a little more centrist. He's a little more middle of the road. And that's actually what that court needs. We can't have that court unbalanced on one side or the other. It will severely change how this country operates. And that just, isn't something I care to see. That is something that scares me, in fact.
Well, especially if it's in balance towards the right.
Well, sure. I definitely find myself leaning more to the left of center than to the right on most topics, but I am not a Democrat.
Me neither. No.
God,
When I say
Democrat.
left, I mean left, not Democrat.
What are the cases? What are the cases right now that are really going to be affected by him being nominated? What are the type of cases that are going to come up that'll have a big impact for years to come?
Well, okay, so I think the biggest scare right now with Neil Gorsuch getting on the court would be for the LGBT community, as we see a lot more of their topics getting to the court or getting close to the court, where the court has to decide whether they're going to make decisions on it. And he has made his views on that pretty clear, that he doesn't think they need any special distinctions or any special protections, and that he, from everything you can read out there, also falls more in line with Mike Pence on the fact that, you don't have to be gay. We can fix that for you.
Boy.
Which, of course, we all know not to be true. Gay conversion therapy
Cannot
does
pray
not
the gay
work.
away.
So with someone like that getting to that court, I think, the loudest voices we should be hearing should be from the LGBTQ community, just really.
And they can be loud.
Yeah, at this
So
point,
let's
they
hear
can.
it, guys. You guys can be loud. Let's be loud.
And I think it's important because I do think they really do need the help and support. I mean, look at North Carolina. Look at the bathroom bill. Look at, all
Right.
these things that are going on right now. A lot of these types of topics have been making it up to the Supreme Court level, and a lot more, I think, will over the next decade. And if he's on that court for the next 30, 40 years and it's leaning far right, that is not a good sign for the future of diversity, the future of inclusiveness. We're looking down a serious path of regression back to, what it was like to be marginalized in, let's say, the 50s, the 40s, even back to the 30s, with these types of societal constraints that you would see back then. And I just don't think going backwards like that is a good idea.
He's also very corporate power. And while the labor movement in the United States is very nearly dead at the moment, any hope of reviving it is in serious jeopardy based on the sorts of decisions he's like. Sure, everyone's heard about the case with the trucker that he ruled against, and then immediately with
Supreme Court. Yeah. That was that. Well, I mean, the labor movement's revitalization. There's a lot of things working against that right now.
it's true.
Besides
But
the Supreme
having
Court,
the Supreme
but
Court heavily
yeah.
biased against it isn't
Yeah,
gonna
no,
help.
I mean that's honestly just like
We don't want the Supreme Court as a majority of the Supreme Court believing that the right to work lie is a good thing.
right.
Because right to work sounds as three words together as something neat, as something, hey, that sounds positive, right?
Yeah.
That spin, it is very bad.
Very bad
And
spin.
it's how you end up without benefits. It's how you end up without company provided health care. It's how you end up without factory protections that keep people from getting injured on the job. It's how companies cut costs by cutting the safety and benefits that unions and everyone else have done such a good job of getting into place. And it is literally just and only a positive for the very rich who own these companies.
Right.
And these are the types of things that Gorsuch believes in. And so that's a really, really bad sign for our Supreme Court if he gets through. And it's looking like tomorrow he probably will.
Things are looking pretty grim, huh?
That's us. Yeah. We talked about states' rights and in North Carolina with the bathroom laws. The other direction we have to talk about is the Assembly bill in California and the blacklist possibility there. So is that something that's gone through that they're looking at voting on still?
Yeah. So in California, San Francisco specific is driving this one home, but there are some statewide bills going through as well. In San Francisco, they're working on making it where they will. Let's see how to word this. They will not give government contracts for labor to companies that help build the wall, basically Trump's wonderful wall with Mexico. Statewide, it gets more interesting because out in California, being, well, honestly, this is strange, but it kind of does fall along those lines. Being very democratically controlled, they haven't really raided the pension funds yet. They're not in a state where the right has been able to allow corporations to just take all that money back. So the country's largest pension funds are out in California. And if you look at the state employment fund and you look at the state teachers fund, their retirement funds combined, they're 500 and I believe it's 14 or 515 billion with a B, dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And they're working on a bill that will divest them from investment in any construction company or worker-based company that works on the wall. And that's a lot of money to be pulling out of investments in companies like that. And there's a surprising percentage of that money actually invested in that space. So these two bills can seriously harm any company that does work on the border wall. And I think it's a great way to come at this simply because, as a state, California isn't going to really convince Trump of anything about stopping the wall. So they've got to play at a state level. And if you're playing with these types of companies, aren't going to be playing politics. They're building the wall because it's going to make them money. So if the math works out that it costs them more money in the long run, then they're not going to build the wall. Being staunchly against the wall, I think this is a great tactic. I think it's a way to hit them exactly where it counts in the one spot that they care about the most.
It's playing his own game against him. It's capitalism. That's what it is. Might as well use it against him.
Beautiful. So just to play small ball for a second for people that are listening, that want to get active, that want to get involved, California's doing it on a state level, which is awesome. But what's a way that people can do things more locally, even if they want to have an effect on their community, towns, things like that? What's a way to actually get people elected to office, for instance?
Well, I mean, sure, you want to get local people elected to office, and I would think, there's a bunch of groups working on that topic now. I would be looking at the Action Groups Network. They are working on local training to get a lot more progressive people elected to all the municipalities. One of the kind of the topics that will lead down that path is, what San Francisco is working on is really mimicking what Berkeley and Oakland are already working on passing. They're very much taking their lead from those two other cities. And so what you can do in your state is you can go to your city councils and you can propose local legislation for this. You can go to your state representatives and you can propose this type of legislation with them.
Anybody can do that?
Anybody can absolutely talk to their representatives. One of the more interesting ways to go about it is to find out at your state house who working for these representatives actually drafts bills and puts these things together, and get some ideas of what these bills might look like, what they might entail. Usually you're talking to interns, you're talking to college students, but you'll get a feel for what you need to pitch. You'll get a much better understanding, and calling your representative's office, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get one of those people on the phone. The front line is really the lower end of their staff, the people who are doing the grunt work. So reach out to your state representatives, reach out to your local city councilors, and start talking to them about running this same type of legislation locally. Make it, nationwide, that it's nearly impossible to do this.
Take your government back, people.
I think it would be pretty cool to get some stories back from people that have done it previously or people that do it after this. Get some stories back about what effect they had too. So,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just saying it's surprising how much effect you can have on this. They listen, they do.
And go with the question about how people can, get involved in taking back their government. It's important to note that even in presidential election years, something like 40% of the eligible voters don't vote. If just by having, some of the people that aren't normally voting turn out, especially in midterm elections.
Yeah.
We could
And in midterm elections, there's a lot of incumbents that people aren't running against as well. Maybe you can be the one to beat them. If you really want to get involved, if you're passionate about changing our government and changing the system and being part of our democracy, run for office. Absolutely. Find out who you can beat and beat them, and we'll probably have your back.
Let's start out even easier. Let's really go to the base level where the youngest people can get involved the easiest. Go for your local ward.
Yeah.
Go for your ward. There are Democratic and Republican committees at the ward level who work for raising money, organizing, and canvassing in their specific area. Find out what precinct you're in. I know I'm Ward 5, Precinct 1. I know that for Malden, Massachusetts.
Right.
And, you can figure out that information pretty easily from your city's websites, from your state's websites. But one of the really interesting pieces to note about this is these need more youth. And these councils will help people run for local city seats, the ward seats, the city council seats, and ward chairs specifically. And here in Massachusetts, Cambridge is a really good example. They have 37 of these seats. And the last time the amount of people that actually wanted these seats, that put their names on the ballots, was 13.
Right.
So literally everyone who wanted one got one of those seats.
Yeah, and some people are waiting to retire.
You literally could have just taken a seat by putting your name up. You wouldn't have had to have run anything, no canvassing, no talking to people. You just put your name on the list and boom, you got the seat.
Yes.
And at that point, you're in politics. You're learning. You're at the base level. You're learning how to organize on a local level, how to deal with the people above you. And when you're in these ward committees and when you're in your local Democratic committees, your local Republican committees, you have to deal with the state level committees. They're really pushing policy and issues, and they're organizing with you. They're reaching out to you to send the bigger politicians, like, in Malden where I live, Maura Healey showed up. Elizabeth Warren has shown up to the area. And they reach out to the local ward committees to do this type of work for them, to rally the troops, to get people to show up to these events. So you're starting to work at those higher levels. And after, a year or two of playing around at this level and really getting a feel for what the politics looks like, who the players are on the on this field, and actually starting to work for a lot of local campaigns, you will find yourself with an understanding of how it all works. And with that understanding, you'll know whether you want to run for the real offices, and you'll know how. And you'll have friends locally who are willing to work for you and do all this effort. So I would say that the first step is going to your ward committees and saying, what's needed, what can I help with? They all have monthly meetings. They all have, well, I hope most of them have websites. Some of them just have Facebook pages. The ones that don't, I've got a project coming up soon to fix that problem for you. But that's where you can start to enter into local politics as a young person. And let's even talk about it. No college degree needed, no job experience needed, no nothing. You're just going to get in at the ground floor and start doing what you can do with the time you have available to spare.
Show up, yeah.
Just show up at your ward level committees. For me, that would be the Democratic Committee of Malden, where I live. Find yours. Show up. Talk to them. One thing I learned showing up to these things, that for the most part, they're disorganized.
Oh, yeah.
They skew very, very old in average age. And they're lucky if they have a website, let alone a Facebook page or anything else. They don't know how to reach out to youth. And coming in with a lot of good ideas, from fundraising to technology, you are going to be needed and wanted.
So a younger person going in there can have the effect, even if not nominated or elected to anything, of just helping bring technology in, a website, Facebook, helping to engage younger voters as well, right?
Yeah, but I mean, really, it's just a way in the door. And once you've got a feel for yourself and how it all works there, you can move up the chain, go for a city council position. We've seen this. We've seen Mike Connolly here in Massachusetts. He went really local, and then he ran a couple times for city councilor till he got it. And, there he learned a lot, and he learned how to deal on the much bigger level. From there, he ran for state, and he got state rep, and he's sitting in our state house now. And I got to tell you, what's really special for me about that is I met this guy at Occupy at the camp on the ground.
Too.
And
No Money Mike.
And to have one of our local occupiers now in the state house is just proof of how starting at that local level, start with your ward committee and moving up, really works.
Yeah.
Awesome. So another topic we're going to transition to that I wanted to cover, it's a little bit more grim, but definitely something that's worth discussing, I think, is sarin gas attacks. So,
what a switch.
That's a change of topic.
It's a hard transition to make, but it's something we have to talk about, I think, and get out there and get some information out, because there's different things being said in a lot of directions right now. And I think people understanding why Assad would do this, what people are doing in response, what countries are playing against the others are really important topics.
Okay, let's go there. All right, everybody. So, of course, if you pay attention to anything in the world at this point, Assad is using chemical weapons against his own people. Again. And you know that he's doing it because last time he did it, our president, Obama at the time, said that he was drawing a red line in the sand and that you were not going to cross this or else. And so Assad did another chemical attack, and Obama did nothing in response. This empowers an authoritarian dictator like this to take this action again. And being that no one has stopped him and that he's had the backup of Russia this whole time, he has done it again. And this time it was bombs full of sarin gas going off that killed nearing 100 people. I believe at last count it was around 86, 87, but at least 25 of them children. That number is probably nearing 30 at this point to be found. They're still digging people out of rubble. This was sarin gas. This is really, really bad stuff. It is going to kill you. It's going to maim you. It's going to, if you survive it, a lot of people wish they hadn't. Yeah. It's not a good time. So we find ourselves in this interesting situation today where our president now, Donald Trump, has started talking about the need to do something about it. And we're at a point where we could very soon actually be taking military action either on the ground or in the air, but most probably from the air, in Syria against Assad while he is still supported by Russia.
Not unconditionally now, though, right?
Yeah, so Russia, in as a result of Trump's new line of rhetoric, Russia has put out a statement saying that their support for Assad is no longer unconditional. And sure, that says something. It's them moving, budging a little. And but with this attack, it's just, I mean, it's a low that you can't allow people to get away with this. Assad should not be in power anymore, and
He shouldn't have been in power 5 years ago, for God's sakes.
correct.
He should have been out of there a while ago.
And I find myself being, in a weird situation because I'm very anti-war.
Yeah, me too.
I'm very anti-boots on the ground in every situation that we can possibly avoid. But watching Ambassador Haley, Nikki Haley at the UN, showing all those images to the Security Council and really graphically detailing what happened to these people, and watching, pretty much no response from the council itself, the
Nobody
Security
wants
Council.
to believe this.
Yeah. Looks unreal.
It's jarring because we know it's happening, but the images really prove it, right? And
The thing is, Assad was bombing his own people years ago, and we knew it.
this has been going
This has
on
been going
the
on
entire
for
time.
so long. And I've been anti-war my whole life, and it was a hard thing 5 years ago, just as it is now, because he was bombing entire cities of people, and babies were dying too. Then he's been killing kids all along. So it's kind of, how long do you let it go on?
Right. So today we find ourselves in this world where Russia is, backpedaling a little on how staunchly they supported him. And, Vladimir Putin's spokesman on this set of topics, Dmitry Peskov, said in an interview today that unconditional support is not possible in the current world. So he was hedging his bets a little. He didn't say just about Syria, but he said overall this is just not a possibility.
Very little hedging his bets.
And he added to that it is not correct to say that Moscow can convince Mr. Assad to do whatever is wanted in Moscow. This is totally wrong. So what he's saying is we don't unconditionally support him, but we also just can't tell him what to do.
Yeah.
So a very deliberately put together sentence.
Yeah, it is. I know. I was thinking the same thing. But I'm also thinking it's like, Russia telling people not to use chemical attacks on somebody is very...
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's like,
there might be, I don't know, some Chechens and some other people who have some questions about how strongly they are there.
Yeah.
So
let me ask why. Well, why would Assad do it? What's the motive for it? Is it just attention in the world and control and sensationalizing, or is there some other motive inside the country?
Well, I mean, obviously, having his motives, I mean, we don't know because he's not stating, right? He's not taking credit for this. He's not saying, I did it because. If you're looking at it kind of historically, why people use these tactics from, the times that we do have explanations, these tactics were used to scare people into submission. Yeah. The fact that this can happen to the people that it just happened to means it can happen to you. Give up your resistance. Stop fighting back, fall in line, support me as your leader, or you're gonna get gassed. That's the message I believe he's trying to send.
That's absolutely what he's trying
the
to
Western
send.
powers won't do anything when I use gas.
There's
so
no
I can
one-
get away
yeah.
with whatever I
He's
want.
making sure they understand that we aren't coming to have their back.
Yeah.
He is
And
flexing nuts.
He
in
might
fact.
have made a mistake this time because as we watch the day go on, I was having this conversation earlier, and the day started out with Trump kind of repeating, earlier I had stated that, we don't need to go in and attack. And then the media really saying, look at Trump on the campaign trail, stating very clearly that we can't go in and that Obama would be making a huge mistake if he attacked Trump, right? Mm-hmm. And then by midday, we find ourselves, by early afternoon, we find ourselves with Trump having a completely different message. Now Trump is saying that these images are just scarring, they're frightening, they're scary, they shouldn't have happened. And he's talking about there may have to be, military options here. There may have to be retribution. And the farther on in the day you go, the more you find he's now actually talking with, the Air Force. He's now talking with Security Council people. He's now talking with the people who might actually organize these types of attacks. He's talking with the people in government who have actually already strategized what our possible attack plans are there, what scenarios exist. Because we've had these scenarios built out for years, that this has been going on for so long that we already have strategies literally just sitting there in, some little blue binder on, someone at the Pentagon's desk, and he's going through those now and seeing which options exist.
What complications are there with Trump's tie-ins with Russia and everybody in the government involved with Russia and the fact that they're a player in this situation? Doesn't that change what those blue binders say?
I find that one really interesting because I was thinking about this one a couple hours ago, and under Obama, the Russians were really, really clear with their message of "fuck you, we support Assad." And it was very clear. And now we've got Trump. And sure, this is a horrific attack, but they've actually done this already before. They've done this attack before, very specifically with the barrel bombs, with the gases, and now suddenly they're singing a slightly different language. They've backed down. Maybe it's only 1% they've backed down, but they've backed down a hair. Is that because of Trump's relationship with them? That would be an interesting thing to kind of go through and talk about. I think, you've got to include not just the relationship of Trump there, you've got to include the relationship of Rex Tillerson. And where does he fit in? I mean, as our Secretary of State, he does also have lots of business dealings in Russia, not only with, groups like Gazprom and everyone else, but, all the way up to the highest levels of the government, including Putin. So maybe their relationships there are playing into how Russia is kind of toning back its support of Assad today. In the end, I think we're going to end up with a really weird situation where Trump might be having to actually attack Assad. And I say that's weird because I'm very anti-war. I'm very anti-American imperialism. I'm very anti America policing the world.
We're sick of it.
But
we're sick of Gaddafi's. We're sick of Hussein's.
At the same time, we're sick of these people, and these people need to be dealt with. And maybe
we say that every time.
Maybe I find myself in a position where I actually think we need to airstrike all of his military bases. We need to airstrike every airstrip he has. We need to take out the helicopters, the planes, and I'm going to go really out on a ledge compared to a lot of the people that I know on the left that are friends of mine, and say, I think we literally need to strategically bomb any building that he might currently be residing in to make sure we get him.
Do you think at this point, Russia giving that 1% wiggle room that they did give in that statement is enough for us to actually make a maneuver, or would they have to back off more before Trump would actually have the audacity to go do that?
Does Trump not have enough audacity to do something?
He claims he does, but I wonder now that there's this much on the line, will he make those same moves and be that bold?
Well, so Russia has continued to make statements all day long, right? And so again, we turn back to, the Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov. He warned against, quote, snap judgments. And he specifically said about this event that, quote, it's indeed a very menacing course of events, dangerous and horrible crime. However, sticking labels on everyone prematurely is not a correct thing to do in our opinion, end quote. So I think what he's saying there is we understand why everyone's so angry, but let's hold off a couple days and see where we are in a couple days. Have you all cooled down a little? And I got to say, don't cool down. Take Assad out finally, please. That's where I find myself. I mean, where do you guys find yourselves?
I'm largely in agreement with you on that. I'm very much against military adventurism and pretty much the entire U.S. foreign policy of the last 40, 50 years. But in this case, we really do have a case where effectively launched the Civil War. He started attacking his citizens that were protesting in the streets.
Yes, a long time ago.
Yeah, years ago.
Yeah.
And they've been just trying to defend themselves and, deal with this horrible dictator. And
Maybe it would help, stop the refugee crisis a little if we could actually shake things up over there more. I mean, maybe it would actually make it worse. Who knows?
and it's always impossible to predict in advance how these things will turn out.
But it's not like things are good there now.
No.
We're not destroying, you know what I mean? It's not like there's something stable there right now. That this is clearly a mess.
He's pushing boundaries for sure. So I see the trajectory being.
He's doing war crimes.
Yeah.
These are straight up war crimes. And there's what is it? The Geneva Convention? There's one of those agreements that we have.
Technically, this one falls under crimes against humanity.
Yeah, crimes against humanity. Isn't there some kind of united group of nations or something that's supposed to have some kind of say in this matter?
They're definitely not united.
I believe there's a building, The Hague, where people go
to.
Yeah,
that's
that
the
sounds
one.
familiar.
Yeah, that's right. What about them, right?
Yeah, I mean, but bringing up The Hague, bringing up anything like the International Criminal Court or any of these other international bodies that might be able to do something means you are agreeing that Assad needs to be given his day in court.
Oh, yeah, right.
I disagree with that.
Yeah.
I think Assad needs to be taken out back and stomped to death, personally.
I mean, just because you agree that he should be given his day in court doesn't mean he will. Let's look at Gaddafi.
Yeah, well, let's not, because that video was really disgusting.
Gruesome,
I was not a fan of that video.
I mean,
I was a fan of him not, being around anymore. Just that was a little graphic.
I have mixed feelings about that one, but not that I was a big fan of him, but I wasn't a big fan of our methods or our actions in Libya. But I'm not usually a fan in foreign wars. I'm not a fan of foreign wars. I'm not a fan of violence. But I'm not a fan of letting this kind of violence continue either. And I have seen so much, there's too much in Syria right now. It's just been too much. And when this is going to be a crater by the time we'd agree to do something about it, Is that what we're waiting for? A crater full of oil? Actually, that might be.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what it'll be. A crater
yeah.
full of oil is what we'll have.
Seems like it'll play out like a chess game, I guess, between how
who
Russia
sweeps in
responds
and cleans up when Assad's gone. Let's imagine a
ISIS.
world.
Wait, I think ISIS, right?
Let's leave a vacuum.
Well, sure, but I mean, ISIS are also basically out of Mosul. All their other towns, they've got, they're under serious attack in Raqqa. I mean,
yeah. I'm just saying.
Do they have the ability to sweep that far west at this point, out of their eastern strongholds?
Al Qaeda, then ISIS, and then what is next, possibly?
AQAP, all these other groups. But I
Turks. I don't know.
I mean, well, for one part, you guys are all kind of talking about the local level.
Yeah.
Needs to, who in that region is in control at that point? Does anyone from Assad's regime survive in a way where
Russians?
we're okay? Exactly, because, someone's going to sweep in as a foreign nation and try and hold this thing together. The Russians have shown they have serious interest in the area.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, they did 137 days of airstrikes and everything else to try and, clear this up. And obviously that didn't do much. Destruction. There's all kinds of towns that are just rubble at this point, but... I mean, does America step in, or does Russia step in? Do the Turks step in?
The Chinese step in?
Who steps in and does the nation building, which is such a horrible term and such a horrible idea, and we've proven, I think, in Afghanistan and Iraq that it probably shouldn't be us. We don't seem to know how to do
what
that.
About Iran?
We proved the shit out of that, really.
I mean, they've definitely got troops on the ground there at this point.
What about Iran?
What about them? Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Call them up and ask.
Someone's going to sweep in, and the question is, with the resources that Syria has and the place on the map that they currently exist, is that someone sweeping in, barring more chemical attacks, better or worse than Assad's current regime?
Or
the people?
Short term or long term?
Exactly. So, that's also the bigger thing that a lot of times when we take military action as a country, don't seem to get considered, or whatever they estimate seems to be wrong.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, again, look at Iraq. We end up with ISIS because of how it was done. You end up with ISIS for 100 other reasons, but one of the reasons ISIS actually was able to take over towns like Mosul, like Raqqa, these big towns, was that they had a lot of military training and access to a lot of military equipment, because when we disbanded the Iraqi army and all of their military structures, we told them all to, in no uncertain terms, hit the bricks, get out of here. Yeah. You can't be in the military anymore. You can't have weapons anymore. You can't do any of these types of things. In fact, just go off in the desert somewhere and die is basically how we treated their ex-military.
Literally.
And after a bunch of years of not getting by, of barely making it when you used to be in charge,
And being able to organize
and not being able to use your skill sets and not being able to use what you were trained to do for so many years, but still knowing where all the weapons are.
yeah. Well, they still have the skill sets. That's the thing.
Right.
They're
Right,
very
they're
Not
just
utilizing
unable
it.
to utilize them.
Yeah.
You know,
to
I
yeah.
can't explain away how they get there, but I can explain how it happened. And it happened because specifically they had that training, they had that knowledge, and there was a vacuum, and they filled it. One of the interesting facts, 25 of ISIS's top 40 leaders once served in the Iraqi military. This is where they got their military knowledge. And America played a large role in just kicking these people to the curb and saying, you can't use that skill set anymore. You have no access to any of this anymore. And I don't know. I mean, I've seen a lot of U.S. military when they come home and they end up as veterans having real problems because their life was spent training for things that they're no longer going to do.
Right.
They're amped up. They're built for this level of adrenaline and this level of interaction with the world that they're no longer getting.
Yeah.
And so our way of dealing with Iraq really led to this huge group of people that had nothing to do with the skill sets they had and were daily growing more and more angry at the West for where they found themselves.
Of course,
Sure.
no way of taking care of providing for their families.
Right. I mean, this is also not just like, this is worse than veterans because this is also people who are seeing their country falling into ruins and know they can do something about it.
With trauma, with PTSD,
And it doesn't-
diagnoses
Yeah,
that aren't even
It
serving at
literally
that point.
doesn't
Yeah.
explain away and or excuse
It's not about their
any of their actions.
diagnosis. It's not. I mean, this is just a logical. I feel like where the
This is
people
logic.
in the
Yeah.
Ba'ath Party and people that had been in the Iraqi military regime went with that. It made complete sense if from where they're standing. Not to like justify ISIS, but what I'm saying is what we did by kicking them out and not making them a part of the new regime was kind of very,
basically
very
inevitable.
short-sighted. Yeah, made it inevitable because you have a bunch of people with military training, with knowledge, with diplomatic knowledge, with respect of their communities, with leadership abilities, and telling them they have to go be goat herders now. You know what I mean?
There's got to be a better way to utilize people
Yeah.
with those kind of resources.
Right. They're the
Hopefully
ones
we
who should
learn.
fill that vacuum if they haven't been war criminals.
They should be empowered, maybe, and who should do the
Well,
empowering?
Yeah.
there?
I mean, over there you do have the Sunni Shiite kind
Right.
of issue where, the Saddam's party and, the Baathists and everything, they were not nice to the other people.
No.
And so
no.
keeping them around in any position where they would have power over anyone else is definitely not a thing you can do. But you have to find better ways to deal with these people if you're going to take those powers, those positions, those jobs away.
Right.
Because, you can't excuse what ISIS has done. They are horrible people. They all deserve what's coming to them as the militaries of the world start bearing down on them.
I hope they get it.
This is just America having a huge role and a huge amount of blame for their rise. If you look at news articles from when they were really starting to appear on the world scene, you see thousands of brand new Toyota trucks.
Oh, Helixes.
Yeah.
The truck you can't kill.
We
With the
sent those there.
With the machine guns mounted on the back.
We sent those there.
Yeah, no,
And
those
now
are,
they're all in their hands.
yeah, those are good trucks though for that kind of desert warfare.
They are.
Also
but,
really good for plumbing.
but I mean, again, the U.S. government sent them there, and
yeah.
and in Anbar province, where a lot of ISIS is really growing out of, the last 12 years or so, they've spent actually battling the U.S. troops, and they've spent it doing it quite well, where they've ended up taking a lot of our military equipment that we had given to the current regime, some of it that is as old as Saddam's regime, but they've taken control of a lot of this equipment and used it to empower themselves.
I mean, the Russians left a lot of equipment with
Yeah, the
people
Russians did too.
so-
But so if you look at our wonderful track record in this region right now, do you want America nation building in Syria? I don't see that
it
as
just seems like a bad idea.
good
You can
idea.
barely nation build in
Batting
America,
over.
for God's sakes, at this point. Like, let alone another country. We have our own nation building to do. Not to be isolationist, but we're not Yeah, our
If
track
we
record's-
can't even fix our own
we
problems,
can't even fix our own
even
problems.
remotely.
Yeah, I
then-
mean, what do we do? Why don't we just build a wall over there? Right? like like we're so intent on building a wall somewhere. Maybe that'll help. I don't know.
probably not.
Probably
at,
not.
at that point, we get into the much deeper subject of, where are the Kurds supposed to live, and
Right.
do
yeah,
they?
Kurdistan.
You hear what I'm saying, though?
Yeah,
like,
I know.
we could go down a rabbit hole that lasts another 10 hours if we start
Yeah.
going down that path. Really, all I'm getting at here is, I do think Saddam, I think he needed to be taken out too, but I think Assad really needs to be taken out.
Like really, actually.
I'm there now. He
Yeah.
has to be killed, and I've been there for a long
I-
time,
yeah,
but now
like-
I'm very public about
Like
it.
I wasn't even there on Saddam and Gaddafi, but I'm there on Assad.
So here we find ourselves with Assad needing to be taken out, and the possibility that it happens. It's an interesting possibility because we know our track record at nation building in any area, really, most of the time leads to pretty bad outcomes.
Right. And we've got Trump, having his ego and needing to prove himself to everybody and having that complex. It's going to be interesting how far Russia has to back off publicly.
Remember, not only weapons of mass destruction, but Saddam gassing and using chemical weapons against the Kurds was another one of the big reasons we were able to convince people that we needed to go into Iraq. So now we're looking at, what's happening in Syria, and there's a similar pattern to what will be some of those final steps that allow us to go in and get rid of him. And so I'm just scared at what the outcome is. I don't know who could possibly solve that big of a problem personally. I don't see it. And that puts me in an interesting spot where I find myself mostly like a lot of the American leaders who have found themselves in that spot before. Do we get rid of this person? And if we do, well, how
And
bad
what?
does that go for us?
Yeah.
What do you think out there? I mean, I'd definitely like to hear what you all think about this one, because, wow, we get rid of them, and then what, are we nation building again? Are we letting Russia come in and take over Syria? I mean, are we letting whoever rises in the vacuum rise up?
I mean, are we saying what's going to happen in such a case, or what should happen?
Is this tactical
really-
in and out? We get them and we walk away and let someone else deal with it? I mean, we've also seen what that does. We don't seem to be very good at that move either.
No.
We're very good at the killing part,
Right.
not so good at the cleanup.
Maybe some sort of alliance of nations could work, and obviously we have organizations that do that, but getting together on that topic to put leadership in, something that might be tried.
Sure. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think we'll know pretty soon if this is got Trump heated enough that he's actually going to act on it, or whether, he slowly backs it down.
Going to be interesting, Trump versus the whole Russia thing, and seeing how far they back down before he can act. So
Yeah, definitely. Well, here we are at an hour. I do believe in an hour we are good to go for this episode. Starting here in a couple weeks, we're actually going to be live on Thursdays. We'll put out a schedule. We'll put out how this all works, but we're going to actually be live on Thursday nights and then put out the podcast via the website, iTunes, Stitcher, and all the other wonderful systems the next day, Friday mornings. And little clips, little YouTube clips, Facebook clips, Twitter clips, all that type stuff for everyone to share and play around with. And hope you all enjoy it.
Greg, when can we expect the audience to be able to engage on the website with the topics we brought up, the organizations we brought up? When can they get that info?
Sure. So if you go to GreggHoush.com, right now, which is possibly how you're listening to this, you'll see it's a very thin site. It's got a couple pictures and a player for these episodes. We have a new website coming. It'll be rolled out over the next few weeks. This website will include all of our episodes, our cast, our engineering team, and some ability for users to interact, some comments on the episodes, comments on the blog posts, things like that. And over the next few months, we'll be rolling out a lot more user interaction. We'll be working over the next probably 6 months to get video going and get Periscope, Facebook Live, YouTube Live going, and really live interaction with the users. Starting with the next few episodes, just like the first one, we are going to start getting more guests in place. And once we really have that all figured out, as you all know, this is episode 3. It'll take us a few more episodes. But once we get this really figured out, we are going to start taking calls near the end of episodes so everyone can interact with us. So So follow us on this little journey here as we get to the point where we actually sound professional and have you all joining in the
Like
conversation.
we've done this before.
Yeah. At this point, I don't believe it sounds like I've done this before. It might sound like I've been on the radio before, but not like I've hosted, because what do I know?
Make it till you make it.
Exactly. So I think that's going to be us signing off for this episode, and I hope everyone enjoyed it.